Only at jail. My senior year, I joined Skull and Bones secret society, so secret I can say anything more. George W. Bush adjudicated for a third president of the United States. Every spring, since 1832, 50 new faces are asked to join the Order of Skull and Bones. After jail, many go on the heights of power and shape our world. This is the story of how and why. The public owes Anthony Sutton a debt of gratitude for this book. It is an essential primer for tracing the families, bloodlines, and business entanglements of America's secret establishment. If one does not have Sutton's information, they will never truly understand American history or foreign policy. Jean Mars, journalist and author of Rule by Secrecy. Notable Bones family: Aldrich, Buckley, Bosch, Bundy, Cheney, Daniels, Davidson, Dodge, Gates, Goodyear, Gold, Harriman, Kellogg, Lord, Lovett, Luce, Phelps, Pillsbury, Pinchot, Rockefeller, Stimson, Taft, Vanderbilt, Weyerhaeuser, Whitney. We offer no objections to their existing clan. No one disputes with them this right. We question but the plan on which they act, that only he who wears upon his breast their emblem, he for every pause shall be considered best. Anonymous Yale Student, 1873. Author's Preface. America's Secret Establishment. After 16 books and 25 years in basic research, I thought I'd hear it all. The world was confused mess, probably beyond understanding, and certainly beyond salvation, and there was little I could do about it. Back in 1968, my Western technology and Soviet economic development was published by the Hoover Institution at Stanford University. In 3 substantial volumes, I detail how the West had built the Soviet Union. However, the work generated a seemingly insoluble puzzle. Why have we done this? Why did we build the Soviet Union? Why we also transferred technology to Hitler's Germany? Why does Washington want to conceal these facts? Why have we boasted Soviet military power and simultaneously boast our own? In subsequent books, The Wall Street Series, I had more questions but no answers. I had more or less arrived at the conclusion that there was no rational answer that could be proven. Then, a year or so ago, I received an 8-inch batch of documents, nothing less than the membership list of an American secret society. Glancing through the sheets, it was more than obvious this was no ordinary group. The names spelled power with capital P. As I proved each individual, a pattern emerged, and a formerly fuzzy word became crystal clear. The book you will read here is a combined version of a series reporting on this research. Each volume builds on the previous volume in a logical step-by-step process. These volumes will explain why the West built the Soviets and Hitler, why we go to war to lose, why Wall Street loves Marxists and Nazis, why the kids can read, why the churches have become propaganda phones, why historical facts are suppressed, why politicians lie, and hundreds other whys. This series is infinitely more important than the original Western technology series on technological transfers. I have a magnum opus. This is it. Anthony C. Sutton, Phoenix, Arizona, July 13, 1983. Introduction for the 2002 edition. America's Secret Establishment has had an unusual publishing history. The book began with an anonymous donation to the author of an 8-inch package of documents in the early 1880s, nothing less than the membership list and supporting documents for a truly secret society, the Yale Skull and Bones. The late Johnny Johnson of Phoenix, Arizona was the spark that moved me to write first and 4-part series, and later a jumbo volume based on this material. This volume went to several editions with several publishers, even a Russian edition of 12,000 copies, probably in the past few years. As many copies has been sold in Russia as in the United States. America's secret establishment has little publicity, few reviews ignored by mainline distributors, yet has sold steadily for the past 16 years at a rate of several hundred copies a month. This activity in turn has generated other articles and books by the other authors, but my real intent to generate an exploration of Hegelian influence in modern America has not been fulfilled. In great part, this can be attributed to an educational system based on statist Hegelian philosophy, and which has already achieved the dumbing down of America. This disastrous, destructive philosophy, the source of both Nazism and Marxism, has in fact corrupted our constitutional republic. Much of the blame for this corruption is with an elitist group of jaily bones men. Their symbol of skull and bones under Hegelian philosophy says it all, although with typical duplicity they will have you believe otherwise. Hegelianism glorifies the states, the vehicle for dissemination of statist and materialist ideas and policies in education, science, politics, and economics. Wonder why we have a dumbed-down society? Look no further than the bondsman's troika who imported the Prussian education system into the US in the 19th century, a political philosophy in direct opposition to the classic liberalism nurtured in 19th century British and American history. In classical liberalism, the state is always subordinate to the individual. In Hegelian aestheticism, as we see in Nazism and Marxism, the state is supreme and the individual exists only to serve the state. Our two-party Republican Democrat, one Hegelian party, no one else welcome or allowed, system is a reflection of this Hegelianism. A small group, a very small group, by using Hegel, can manipulate and to some extent control society for its own purposes. More than that, reflect under pirate flag, an emblem found on poison bottles, the symbol of the Nazi that had division in World War II. Not only did Skull and Bones become a major force in drug smuggling, the Bush and Prescott families in the 1860s, but in true Hegelian fashion generated the antithesis, the so-called war on drugs. The hypocritical policy maintains the price of drugs, controls supplies, and puts millions in jails, while the gainers, in great part, are none other than the same bondsmen who passed the laws to prohibit. Bondsman Taft, 1904. Right and left, a control device. For Hegelians, the state is almighty, as seen as the march of God on earth. Indeed, a state religion. Progress in Hegelian state is through contrived conflict. The clash of opposites makes for progress. If you can control the opposites, you dominate the nature of the outcome. We trace the extraordinary Skull and Bones influence in a major Hegelian conflict, Nazism versus communism. Skulls and Bones members were in the dominant decision-making position. Bush, Harriman, Stimson, Lovett, and so on, all bondsmen and instrumental in guiding the conflict through use of right and left. They finance and encourage the growth of both philosophies and control the outcome to a significant extent. This was aided by the reductionist divisions in science, the opposite of historical wholeness. By dividing science and learning into narrower and narrower segments, it became easier to control the whole through the parts. In education, the Dewey system was initiated and promoted by Skull and Bones member. Dewey was an ardent and statist and believer in the Hegelian idea that the child exists to be trained to serve the state. This requires suppression of individualist tendencies and a careful spoon-feeding of approved knowledge. This dumbing down of American education is not easily apparent unless you have studied in both foreign and domestic US universities. Then the contrasts become crystal clear. This dumbing down is now receiving attention. Two excellent books are The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America by Charlotte Thompson Iserbyt, Conscience Press, Ravenna, Ohio, 2001, and The Dumbing Down of America by John Taylor Gatto. Both books trace this process to the impact of education, and both give remarkable detail of the process. We go further in that we trace the import of the system to three jailies, members of Skull and Bones. For Iserbyt, in The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America, the American education system begins with Rockefeller and Gates, but in fact this statist system is a reflection of the Hegelian ideas brought to the United States by the Skull and Bones troika of Gilman, White, and Dwight, then financed by Rockefeller. People control. Today in California, one can see in real time the use of controlled conflict to achieve a desired outcome. The debate over the energy crisis is carefully contained to a debate over price caps and price control. Republicans want no caps and no controls. Most Democrats want price controls through caps. But look, what is not discussed anywhere, the entire spectrum of almost free energy, based on a decade of research, is carefully kept out of the discussion. Isn't this highly relevant to an energy crisis? In fact, the existence of free energy systems just down the road is the reason for the control debate. Mill's blacklight power now has its patents, and some utilities have already bought in. Virgin MAG energy from space, it's under discussion. Working model exists. The maligned cold fusion has hundreds of successful experiments, but so far as we know, cannot be repeated with sufficient assurance. Other systems have come into view of government agencies and then disappeared from sight. A knowing public will ask, why are those not included in the discussion? Simple, because utilities know they are for real and only a few years down the road. The problem for utilities is not the price of energy today, but how to dump their fixed assets, hydro plants, transmission lines, etc. To the public, these valuable assets will have zero value down the road because all new systems are standalone units, which don't need fixed plants and transmission lines. The public is aware of the dilemma of the utilities. The ability to dump down assets onto the state is heavily reduced. The Republican-Democrat debate over caps is diversion. The relevant question carefully avoided is how long will it take to get a new system into production? Another example is Monsanto Corporation development of genetic engineering and predator seed, a barely concealed effort for world domination of agriculture. President George Bush Jr. appoints a Monsanto Vice President, Dr. Virginia Walton, Director of Food and Drug Administration, which has the power to block labeling of genetically engineered foods and pass on other corporate control efforts. Just before this, in new technology, we had 1989 dramatic announcement of cold fusion. When this announcement was made public, President George Bush also appointed called establishment scientists, the late physicist Seagram, into his office and gave instructions. We don't know what was said, but we know what happened. Cold fusion, a valid process for free energy, as was subsequently revealed, was slandered and harassed by the establishment, no doubt fearful of what free energy will do to the oil industry. What is to be done? If the voting public was even vaguely aware of this rampant and concealed scenario, it could and possibly will force change. However, this is not a likely possibility. Most people are go-along types with limited personal objectives and high threshold for official misdeed. What has taken over a century to establish cannot be changed in a few years. The initial question is education, to eliminate the Hegelian system that stifles individual initiative and trains children to become mindless zombies serving the state. We need a lot less propaganda for education and more individual creative search for learning. Instead of more money for education, we need to allocate a lot less. The existing system of education is little more than a conditioning mechanism. It has little to do with education, it's the true sense, and a lot to do with control of the individual. It's more likely that time, rather than voting vote, will erode the secret power of this jail group. Nothing this outrageous can survive forever. Anthony Sudden. Introduction to the Order. Memorandum number 1. Is there a conspiracy explanation for recent history? The reader anxious to get into the history of the Order should go directly to the Memorandum number 2. This section concerns methods, evidence, and proof. Essential but perhaps boring for most readers. During the past 100 years, any theory of history or historical evidence that falls outside a pattern established by the American Historical Association and the major foundations with their grant-making power has been attacked or rejected, not on the basis of any evidence presented, but on the basis of the acceptability of the argument to the so-called Eastern liberal establishment and its official historical line. The official establishment history. There is an establishment history and official history, which dominates history textbooks, trade publishing, the media, and library shelves. The official line always assumes that events such as wars, revolution, scandals, assassinations are more or less random, unconnected events. By definition, events can never be the result of a conspiracy. They can never result from premeditated planned group action. An excellent example is the Kennedy assassination when, within 9 hours of the Dallas tragedy, TV networks announced the shooting was not a conspiracy, regardless of the fact that a negative proposition can never be proven and that the investigation had barely begun. Woe betide any book or author that falls outside the official guidelines. Foundation support is not there. Publishers get cold feet. Distribution is hit and miss or non-existent. Just to ensure the official line dominates, in 1946 the Rockefeller Foundation allotted $1,300 for an official history of World War II. This to avoid a repeat of debunking history books which embarrassed the establishment after World War I. The reader will be interested to know that the order we are about to investigate had great foresight back in the 1880s to create both the American Historical Association and the American Economic Association. Most economists were there, more historians than analysts, under their terms. With their people and their objectives, Andrew Dixon White was a member of the order and the first president of the American Historical Association. Failure of official history. Times have changed. The weakness, inconsistencies, and plain untruths in official history have surfaced. In 1980s, it's rare to find a thinking reader who accepts official history. Most believe it has been more or less packaged for mass consumption by naive or greedy historians, although an historian who will stick out his neck and buck the trend is rare. Some who do are victims of an even deeper game. Conspiracy then is an accepted explanation for many events at the intelligent grassroots level, that level farthest removed from the influence of the order. We can cite at random the Kennedy assassination, where the official lone gunman theory was never accepted by Americans in their street. Watergate, where a deep-throat informer and erased tapes reek of conspiracy. And Pearl Harbor, where Rear Admiral Husband E. Kimmel and Major General Walter C. Short took the rap for General George C. Marshall and President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. The revisionist historian has a double burden as well as a double task. The double burden is that research likely to question the official historical line will not get financed. The double task is that research must be more than usually careful and precise. A non-official work is not going to be judged on its merits. The work will be judged on the basis of its acceptability to a predetermined historical standard. What this standard is, we shall explore later. Hypothesis and method, which bring us to the methodology. In this volume, we will present three hypotheses. What is hypothesis? A hypothesis is a theory, a working theory, a start point, which has to support by evidence. We arrive at these three hypotheses by examining certain documents, which will also be described. The official history hatchet mongers will scream that our hypotheses are now being presented as proven assertions, and whatever we write here will not stop the screams. But again, these are only hypotheses at this point. They have to be supported with evidence. They are a first step in logical research process. Now, in scientific methodology, hypothesis can be proven. It cannot be disproven. It is up to the reader to decide whether the evidence presented later supports or does not support the hypothesis. Obviously, no one author, critic, or reader can decide either way until all evidence has been presented. We also intend to use two other principles of scientific research ignored by official establishment historians. Firstly, in science, the simplest explanation to a problem is always the most acceptable solution. By contrast, in establishment history, a simple answer is usually criticized as simplistic. What the critic implies is the poor writer hasn't used all the facts. In other words, it's a cheap put down without the necessity of providing an alternate answer or additional facts. Secondly, again in science, an answer that fits the most cases, the most general answer, is also the most acceptable answer. For example, you have 12 events to explain and a theory that fits 11 of these events. The theory is more acceptable than a theory that fits only 4 or 5 of these events. The double theory of history. Using this methodology, we are going to argue and present detailed, precise evidence, including names, dates, and places, that the only reasonable explanation for recent history in the United States is that there exists a conspiracy to use a political power for ends which are inconsistent with the Constitution. This is known by the official historians as the double theory of history, which again is a quick, cheap device for brushing facts under the rug. However, these critics ignore, for example, the Sherman Act. The antitrust laws were conspiracy is the basic accepted theory. If there can be a conspiracy in the marketplace, then why not in the political arena? Are politicians any purer than businessmen? Following the antitrust laws, we know that conspiracy can only be proven in a specific manner. A similar pattern of market action is not proof of the conspiracy. Just because something looks like a dog, was like a dog, and all the dogs act similarly, does not make it a dog or a conspiracy. Under the Sherman Act, a similar pattern of prices where all prices are the same is not proof of conspiracy. Similarity of prices can occur in a poorly competitive market. Neither is similar political action necessarily a conspiracy. Proof of conspiracy requires specific types of evidence. A. There must be a secret meetings of the participants and efforts made to conceal joint actions. B. Those meetings must jointly agree to take a course of action. C. And this action must be illegal. The Council on Foreign Relations. Widely accepted explanations of recent history based on a conspiracy theory do not present evidence that fits the above criteria. For example, the Council on Foreign Relations cannot be claimed as a conspiracy, even for the period since its founding in 1921. Membership in the CFR is not a secret. Membership lists are freely available for the cost of a postage stamp. There is no proof that the entire membership conspires to commit illegal acts. What has to be proven in any conspiracy explanation of history is that the participants have secret groupings admit to plan illegal actions. Members of the CFR, when accused of being involved in a conspiracy, have protested to the contrary. And by and large, they are right. Most CFR members are not involved in a conspiracy, have no knowledge of any conspiracy, and some personally known to the author are about the last people on earth to get involved in an illegal conspiracy. However, there is a group within the Council of Foreign Relations which belongs to a secret society, sworn to secrecy, and which more or less controls the CFR. CFR meetings are used for their own purposes, to push out ideas, to weigh up people who might be useful, to use meetings as a forum for discussion. These members are in the order. Their membership in the order can be proven. Their meetings can be proven. Their objectives are plainly unconstitutional, and this order has existed for 150 years in the United States. Memorandum number 2. The order. What is and how it began. Those on the inside know it as the order. Others have known it for more than 150 years as Chapter 322 of a German secret society. More formally, for legal purposes, the order was incorporated as the Russell Trust in 1856. It was also once known as the Brotherhood of Death. Those who make light of it or want to make fun of it call it skulls and bones, or just plain bones. The American chapter of this German order was founded in 1833 at Yale University by General William Huntington Russell and Alphonso Taft, who in 1876 became Secretary of War in the Grand Administration. Alphonso Taft was the father of the William Howard Taft, the only to be both President and Chief Justice of the United States. What is the order? The order is not just another campus Greek letter fraternal society with passwords and hand grips common to most campuses. Chapter 322 is a secret society whose members are sworn to silence. It only exists on the Yale campus that we know about. It has rules. It has ceremonial rites. It is not at all happy with proving citizens, known among initiates as outsiders or vandals. Its members always deny membership or are supposed to deny membership, and in checking hundreds of autobiographical listings for members, we found only half a dozen who cited an affiliation with the Skull and Bones. The rest were none. An interesting point is whether the many members in various administrations or who hold government positions have declared their members in their biographical data supply for FBI background checks. Above all, the order is powerful, unbelievably powerful. If the reader will persist and examine the evidence to be presented, which is overwhelming, there is no doubt his view of the world will suddenly come sharply into focus, with almost frightening clarity. Before we go further, we need to add a couple of important observations about the order. It is a senior year society which exists only at Yale. Members are chosen in their junior year and spend only 1 year on campus. The senior year with Skull and Bones. In other words, the organization is oriented to the postgraduate outside world. The order meets annually, patriarchs only, on Deer Island in the St. Lawrence River. Senior societies are unique to Yale. There are 2 other societies at Yale, but none elsewhere. Scroll and Key and Wolf's Head are supposedly competitive societies founded in the mid-19th century. We believe this to be part of the same network. Rosenbaum commented in his Esquire article very accurately that anyone in the Eastern liberal establishment who is not a member of Skull and Bones is almost certainly a member of either Scroll and Key or Wolf's Head. What is the significance of the 322? In chapter 322, William Russell imported the society from Germany, and so it has been argued that the 322 stands for 32 from 1832, the second chapter of this German organization. Possibly a chapter 320 and a chapter 321 may exist somewhere, and 323 is the designation of a room within the Skull and Bones temple at jail. Another interpretation is that the order is descended from a Greek fraternal society dating back to Demosthenes in 322 BC. This has perhaps some credibility because Bones records are dated by adding 322 to the current year. Records originating in 1950 are dated Anno Demostheni 2272. How a member is chosen by the order. The selection procedure for new members of the order has not changed since 1832. Each year, 15, and only 15, never more, never fewer, are selected. In the past 150 years, about 2,500 Yale graduates have been initiated into the order. At any one time, about 500, 600 are alive and active. Roughly about one quarter of these take an active role in furthering the objectives of the order. The orders either lose interest or change their minds. They are silent dropouts. A Yale junior cannot ask to join. There is no electioneering. Juniors are invited to join, are given two options: accept or reject. Apparently some amount of personal information is gathered on potential members. The following is the kind of evaluation made in the last century. Without it has changed too much down to the present time. Frank Moore is an ideal bondsman. He is a hard-working and man whose efforts have been more for Yale than himself. He is a manager of the musical clubs and has been active in the White Holt. His selection will be deserved and popular. Tom Thompson is a sure man whom the class wishes well for and will be glad to see go. He comes from a Bones family. In selection, emphasis is placed on athletic ability, the ability to play on a team. The most unlikely potential member of the order is a loner, an iconoclast, an individualist, the man who goes his own way in the war. The most likely potential member is from a Bones family, who is energetic, resourceful, political, and probably an amoral team player. A man who understands that to get along you have to go along. A man who will sacrifice himself for the good of the team. A moment's reflection illustrates why this is so. In real life, the trust of the order, it is so ring about certain objectives. Honors and financial rewards are guaranteed by the order, by the power of the order. But the price of these honors and rewards is sacrifice to the common goal, the goal of the order. Some perhaps many have not been willing to pay the price. Inside the order, entry into the order is accompanied by an elaborate ritual and no doubt by psychological conditioning. For example, immediately on entering Bones, a neophyte name is changed. He is no longer known by his name as it appears in the college catalogue, but like a monk of or Knight of Malta or Saint John becomes knight, so and so. The old knights are then known as patriarch, so and so. the outside world are known as Gentiles and Vandals. The catalogue, or membership list, it became addresses sometime in this century of chapter 322. However, it is made with the usual outside names and is unique and impressive. Each member has a copy bound in black leather with peculiar symbols on the outside and inside. The symbols presumably have some meaning. The owner's name and the single letter D is gilt stamped on the outer cover of the earlier issues, at least up to the mid-19th century. It then appears to have been omitted, at least on copies we have seen. Each right-hand page printed one side only, about 6 plus 4 inches, has the members listed for 1 year and surrounded by a heavy black border. Thick in the early years, not so thick in recent decades, to symbolize the death of the person named as he adopted his new name and new life upon entering the order. Most interesting is an entry between the decade list of members. On the 1833 list before the 15 founders' names are the words period 2, decade 3. Similarly, before names on the 1843 list are the words period 2, decade 4. In brief, period stays the same throughout the years, but the decade member number increases by 1 in each 10 years. No doubt this means something to the order, else it wouldn't be there. Another mystical group of letters and numbers is at the top of the first list of the names in 1833. P 231, D 31. The numbers increase by 1 in each succeeding class. In 1834, for example, the entry reads P 232, D 33. Furthermore, the first class list of 1833 has 2 black lines in place of the 11th name on the list. This supports the argument that the society has German origins, and this is the listing of the anonymous German connection. The members of 1833. We estimate that at any one time, only about 1/4 of the membership is active. Even the active quarter is not always effective or successful. It is intrusive to compare 1833 with 1983. How? Over the century and a half span, a group of 20 to 30 families has emerged to dominate the order. The very first name on the very first membership list, Samuel Henshaw Bates, was a private in the Union. 1879. A life not different to millions of other Americans. In fact, out of the first 15 members, actually 14 plus the anonymous members, achievements were not much greater than we will expect from the cream of a jail class. Rufus Hart spent several years in the Ohio Senate. As Hale Hooker, Lewis was in the Ohio legislature for a couple of years. Samuel Marshall was an Illinois state legislator for a while, and Frederick Mather was much with their lives or of the order. By contrast, the 2 founding members, William Huntington Russell and Alphonso Taft, went far. William Russell was a member of the Connecticut State Legislature in 1846-47, a general in the Connecticut National Guard from 1860-70, and founded the Collegiate and Commercial Institute in New Haven, Connecticut. Alphonso Taft went further. He was Secretary of War in 1876, the first of several members of the order to hold this post down into the 1950s. Taft became U.S. Attorney General in 1876-7, then U.S. Minister to Austria in 1882-4, and finally U.S. Ambassador to Russia in 1884-5. During the 150-year interval since 1833, active membership has evolved into a core group of perhaps 20 to 30 families. It seems that active members have enough influence to push their sons and relatives into the order, and there is significant intermarriage among the families. These families fall into two major groups: Phelps, Wadsworth, Allen, Bundy, Adams, and so on. Second, we find families who acquired wealth in the last 100 years, sent their sons to jail, and in the time, some families like Whitney's were Connecticut Yankees and acquired wealth in the 19th century. In the last 150 years, a few families in the order have gained enormous influence in society and the world. One example is the Lord family. Two branches of this family date from the 1630s. Those descend from Nathan Lord and those from Thomas Lord. Other lords arrive in the US over the years, but do not enter our discussion. Of these two main branches, only the Thomas Lord group appears to have contributed members to the order. Their ancestry traces to Thomas Lord, who left Essex, England, 1635, in a company led by Rev. Thomas Hooker, and settled in what is now Hartford, Connecticut. In fact, part of Hartford is still known as Lord's Hill. The line of descent for this Lord family is full of DeForest and Lockwood names, because intermarriage is more than common among these elite families. The first Lord to be initiated into the order was George DeForest Lord, a New York lawyer, together with his father Daniel Lord, another Yale graduate. George DeForest established the New York law firm The Lord, Day and Lord. Among his present-day clients are the New York Times and the Robin Foundation. The Robin Foundation is one of the financial angels for the Institute for Policy Studies in Washington, D.C. In the next 100 years, 5 more lords were initiated into the order: Franklin Atkins Lord, William Galley Lord, Oswald Bates Lord, Charles Edwin Lord II, with Winston Lord. When we ask the question, what have these members achieved and what are they doing today? A dramatic picture emerges, as demonstrated in the chart. Past lords in the order and the lords today. 1854 George I Lord, 1898 Franklin Atkins Lord, 1922 William Galley Lord. Francis Norton, son, is Charles Edwin Lord II. Charles Edwin Lord, acting controller of the currency, 1981, and 1926 Oswald Bates Lord, Mary Pillsbury of Pillsbury Fleur family, son, is Winston Lord, 1949 Charles Edwin Lord II, and 1959 Winston Lord. Are Winston Lord chairman of the Council of Foreign Relations, 1983. Memorandum number 3. How much is known about the order? The openly published literature on the order amounts to merely 2 articles over a span of 100 years. The Iconoclast, Volume 1, Number 1 only, published October 13, 1873, and an already cited article in Esquire by Ron Rosenbaum, published in 1977. This book and its successor are based on unpublished archival material originating with the order. The Iconoclast, October 1873, back in October 1873, an enterprising jail student stung to action because the order had taken over jail finances and left the university near poverty, took it up himself to publish and expose. Unfortunately, some of the anonymous students' accurate observations were buried in not so good verses. We will reprint up some of the verses below as in the original iconoclast because it is impossible to summarize. The Yale College newspapers, co-ran and record, had a blackout policy on the order. As iconoclast puts it, we speak through a new publication because the college press is closed to those who dare to openly mention bones. The college press was controlled by the order. From time to time, Yale newspapers were run by editors in the order. For example, one noteworthy editor of the Yale Record, also in the order, was Thomas Cochrane. 94. Who went on to make a career as an influential partner in the influential banking firm of J.P. Morgan. 3 paragraphs in this anonymous publication summarize the iconoclast accusation. First, there is a Yale secrecy society open only to a select few. For more than 40 years, a secret society called Skull and Bones has existed in Yale College. It receives a certain number of men from each class. These are chosen nominally by the members of the class, although it is understood that a prominent man's influence avails for his friends and relatives through several years after his graduation. By observing the men elected from year to year, we find that they are chosen with a distinct end in view, namely that of obtaining for the society the most honors. Some of these honors are given to literary, some to wealthy men. This then is the case. Men receive marks of distinction from Yale College or from their entire class because of which they are taken into this secret society. Since Yale honors men, this fraternity professes to honor them also. Secondly, the iconoclast states that the order has obtained control of Yale, and its members care more for their society than for Yale. Out of every class, Skull and Bones takes its men. They have gone out into the world and have become, in many instances, leaders in society. They have obtained control of Yale. Its business is performed by them. Money paid to the college must be passed into their hands and be subject to their will. No doubt they are worthy men in themselves, but the many whom they look down upon while in college cannot so far forget as to keep money freely into their hands. Men in Wall Street complain that the college comes straight to them for help instead of asking each graduate for his share. The reason is found in a remark made by one of Yale's and America's fierce men. Few will give both bondsmen, and they care far more for their society than they do for the college. Finally, the iconoclast calls the order a deadly apple, growing year by year. Year by year, the deadly apple is growing. The society was never as obnoxious to the college as it is today, and it is just this ill feeling that shuts the pockets of non-members. Never before has it shown such arrogance and self-financed superiority. It grasps the college press and endeavors to rule it all. It does not deign to show its credentials, but clutches at power with the silence of conscious guilt. To tell the good which Yale College has done will be well nigh impossible. To tell the good she might do will be yet more difficult. The question then is reduced to this. On the one hand lies a source of incalculable good, on the other a society guilty of serious and far-reaching crimes. It is at Yale College against Skull and Bones. We ask all men, as a question of right, which should be allowed to live. The power of the order is to put to use on behalf of its member even before they leave Yale. Here's a case from the late 19th century which predates the cases we will present later and suggests how long immoral use of power has prevailed within the order. Are the favoritism shown to bondsmen? Are we coming to a sad state when open injustice can be done by the faculty, and when the fact that a man is a member of Skull and Bones can prejudice them in his favor. Briefly, the ease which calls for this question is this: two members of the senior class, the one being a neutral, the other a bondsman, return at the beginning of the college year laden with several conditions, some of which, upon examination, they failed to pass. Up to this point, the cases were parallel, and the leniency, if there was to be leniency, should have been shown to the neutral, who has done all that lay in his power to further the interests of the college, rather to the bondsman who has, during his 3 years at Yale, accomplished nothing that we wot of, but strange to say, the former has been suspended until the end of the term, and obliged to leave town, not being permitted to pass another examination until he returns. The bondsman, on the contrary, is allowed to remain in New Haven, attends recitation daily, is called upon to recite, and will have a second examination in less than 6 weeks. Why is this distinction made? Oh, Mr. So-and-so is a special case, said a professor, a bondsman. The specialty, we presume, being the fact that Mr. So-and-so wears a death's head and crossbones upon his bosom. We understand that Mr. So-and-so claims to have been ill during vacation and offers the illness as an excuse for not passing the examination. But the neutral gentleman was also ill, as the faculty were explicitly informed in a letter from his father. The circumstance has caused a very lively indignation throughout the senior class. It is certainly time for a radical reform when the gentleman who superintended our destinies, and who should be just, if nothing else, can allow themselves to be influenced by so pretty a thing as society connections. Esquire, September 1977. Only one article is known to have been published within the last 100 years on the order. Unfortunately, it is a superficial, almost mocking review, and provides some enlightenment but little contribution to historical knowledge. The article is Last Secrets of Skull and Bones by Ron Rosenbaum, Esquire, September 1977. Rosenbaum is a Yale graduate, attracted by the fictional possibilities of a secret society out to control the world. He is apparently not aware of the political implications. The contribution is a blend of known authentic documents and outright hearsay. On the other hand, Rosenbaum does make some notable observations. Among these are the people who have shaped America's national character since it ceased being an undergraduate power, had their undergraduate character shaped in that crypt over there, the temple on the Yale campus. Another comment when a new member is initiated into the order: tonight he will die to the war and be born again into the order, as he will thenceforth refer to it. The order is a world unto itself, in which he will have a new name and 14 new blood brothers, also with new names. And when Rosenbaum starts to inquire about the order, he's told they don't like people tampering and prying. The power of Bones is incredible. They got their hands on every lever of power in the country. You will see, it's like trying to look into the mafia. Remember, they are a secret society too. The Squire's piece is well worth reading. It gives a side of the order that doesn't concern us too much. The addresses. Books. As the order is a secret society, it does not publish minutes or journals. As Rosenbaum suggests, they don't like people tampering and prying. This author does, however, possess copies of the addresses books, which used to be called catalogs. These are the membership lists all the way back to 1832, the founding day in the United States. How did this material make its way into the outside hands? It is possible that one or more members, although bound by oath, will not be dismayed if the history become public knowledge. That's all we say. Other material exists. Skulls and Bones is always a lively topic for Yale conversation. Some time back, a few practical-minded students made their own investigation. They did a break-in job, a jailgate, a small hoard of bonds, mementos, a layout diagram, and considerable embarrassment resulted. The core of the research for the book is the addresses books. With this, we can reconstruct a picture of motives, objectives, and operations. The actions of individual members are already recorded in open history and archives. By determining when members enter a scene, what they did, what they argued, who they appointed, and when they faded out, we can assemble patterns and deduce objectives. Memorandum number 4. Who is in this secret society? The membership list of about 2,500 initiates into the order has very obvious features. Most members are from eastern seaboard United States. As late as 1915, only 3 members resided in Los Angeles, California, but 28 members resided in New Haven, Connecticut. Members are all males and almost all WASPs, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. In great part they descend from English Puritan families. Their ancestors arrived in North America in the 1630s and 60 period. These Puritan families either intermarried with financial power or invited in sons of money moguls, Rockefeller, Davidsons, Harrimans, whose sons became members of the order. From this preliminary information we can derive hypothesis 1. There exists in the United States today and has existence since 1833 a secret society comprising members of all line American families and representatives of financial power. The chart on page 19 presents a simplified layout of this hypothesis. Full information remains for a later book. For now, we will give details of just 2 key female families, the Whitneys and the Harrimans. The Whitney family, a key family is the Whitneys, descend from English Puritans who came to the U.S. about 1635 and settled in Watertown, Massachusetts. 8 Whitneys have been members of the order. Of these, 3 had pre-lives. Emerson Coxwell Whitney died a few months after initiation, and Edward Payson Whitney disappeared in 1858, according to this biographer. However, 3 Whitneys, William Collins Whitney and his 2 sons, are the core of Whitney influence in the order, which survives today through the Harriman family and the intermarriage with Paynes and Vanderbilts. Whitneys in the order. Initiation 1851 Emerson Coxwell Whitney. Education died December 1st, 1851. 1854 Edward Payson Whitney. Medicine disappeared in 1858. 1856 James Lyman Whitney. Library work, Boston Library. 1863 William Collins Whitney, Secretary of Navy. 1885 to 9 Promoter and Financier. 1878 Edward Baldwin Whitney, Law, Justice, New York Supreme Court. 1882 Joseph Ernest Whitney, Education, died February 25th, 1893. 1894 Payne Whitney, son of W.C. Whitney, Finance, Knickerbocker Trust Company. 1898 Harry Payne Whitney, son of W.C. Whitney, Finance, Guarantee Trust and Guggenheim Exploration Company. William Collins Whitney, 1841 to 1904, is a fine example of how members of the order rise to fame and fortune. W.C. Whitney was initiated in 1863 and by 1872 had only advanced his career to inspector of schools for New York. However, in the last 3 decades of the century, he rolled up massive fortune, became a power behind the throne in Cleveland administration, and directed the often unscrupulous activities of a cluster of capitalists known as the Whitney Group. A brief quotation suggests the power that Whitney amassed in a brief 30 years. This is a list of Whitney estates at the turn of the century: a city residence in New York, a Venetian palace, and 5,000 acres in Whitley Hills near Jamaica. L.I. a ship shed bay house with a private track covering 300 acres, a mansion at Berkshire Hills, Massachusetts, with 700 acres of land, October Mountain House, with a large tract of land, Stonyford Farm, New York, used as an auxiliary to his Kentucky stock farm, an Adirondack game preserve of 16,000 acres, a lodge at Blue Mountain Lake, with a fine golf course, a bluegrass farm of 3,000 acres in Kentucky, and an estate at Aiken, South Carolina, comprising a mansion, race cars, and 2,000 acres of hunting land. William C. Whitney married Flora Payne, daughter of his younger old treasurer Oliver Payne. The Paynes are not in the order, but adding the Payne piece of the standard old fortune made Whitney's future that much larger. Their two sons, Harry Payne, 94, and Payne Whitney, 98, went to jail and became members of the order. After jail, Harry Payne promptly married Gertrude Vanderbilt in 1896, and so the Whitney Payne fortune now joined some Vanderbilt money. This financial power was channeled into Guaranty Trust, the J.P. Morgan and Guggenheim outfits, and it gets more complicated. For example, the son of Harry Payne Whitney, Cornelius Vanderbilt Whitney, married Mary Norton. After their divorce, Mary Norton Whitney married W. Averell Harriman, his first wife, who is today at 91 a key member. It is this tightly woven family and financial interlocks that make up the core of the order. So let's take a look at the Harriman family. The Harriman family. In the first few days of June 1983, a prominent American private citizen flew to Moscow for a confidential chat with Yuri Andropov. A State Department interpreter went along. This American was not the president, nor the vice president, nor the Secretary of State, nor any member of the Reagan administration. It was a private individual. W. Averell Harriman, the first time any American had talked with Yuri Andropov since the death of his predecessor, Brezhnev. So who is W. Averell Harriman? The elder Harriman, a prominent and not too scrupulous railroad magnate, sent both his sons to jail. William Averell Harriman, 13, and Edward Roland Nolly Harriman, 17, joined the order. A good example how all the line family in the order absorbed new wealth families, although as history has unfolded, it might be that Harriman and his fellow investment bankers have dominated the direction of the order in the past few decades. In the 1930s, W. A. Harriman and Company merged with Brown Brothers. This was an older financial abuse whose partners were also members of the order. Alexander Brown was founded in 18th in New York and Philadelphia. By the 1970s, the relatively unknown private international banking firm of Brown Brothers Harriman, with assets of about $1.5 billion, had taken in so many of the Brotherhood that out of 26 individual patrons, no fewer than 9 were members of the order. We don't know of any greater concentration of members. And to make it more interesting, Prescott Bush, father of President H. W. Bush, both in the order, was a partner in Brown Brothers Harriman for over 40 years. Finally, because Brown Brothers Harriman is a private banking firm, it has relatively no government supervision and does not publish an annual report. In other words, we know nothing about its operation. At least we know nothing from Brown Brothers Harriman sources. Here's a lineup of Brown Brothers Harriman partners who were also members of the order in the mid-1970s. Walter H. Brown, 1945. Prescott Sheldon Bush, 1917. Granger Cutts Khan, 1929. Edward Roland Noel Harriman, 1970. W. Averell Harriman, 1913. Stephen Young Hort, 1921. Robert Abercrombie Lovett, 1918. John Beckwith Maiden, 1941. Knight Woolley, 1917. It's worth thinking about this concentration of names and the power it represents in the life of outside comments on the order over the years. After the title page of this volume, we reprint the verse of an anonymous Yale student of the 1870s. He commented on the requirement to put the order ahead of all else. The editor of the Iconoclast also in the 1870s wrote, and on their breasts they were a sign that tells their race and name. It is the ghastly badge of death, and from his kingdom came the son of Satan, son of sin, the enemy of man. Another writer in the 1870s called the order the Brotherhood of Death. Outside already in the doubtful dawn. Thither, from this side and from that, slow swept and settled down in silence solidly, crowd-wise, the frightful Brotherhood of Death, black-hatted and black-wooded huddled today, with black cravats dangling from each neck. So take they their grim station at the door, torture lit, skull and cross bones banner spread. Ron Rosenbaum, in his 1977 Esquire article, a century later, was no less caustic. Rosenbaum called it a mafia. From evidence to be presented later, this author will term the order an international mafia, unregulated and all but unknown to the outside world. However, it's merely Brown Brothers Harriman, 59 Wall Street, New York, but obviously Yuri Andropov over in Moscow knows who holds the cards. The British connection. Some well-read readers may raise a question: how does the order, its families relate to Cecil Rhodes' secret society, Milner's Round Table, the Illuminati and the Jewish secret society equivalents? How do these fit into the picture? We are concerned here only with the core of a purely American phenomenon with German origin. It's undoubtedly linked to overseas groups. The links between the order and Britain go through Lazar Fredes and the private merchant bankers. Notably, the British establishment was also founded at the university, Oxford University, and especially All Souls College at Oxford. The British element is called the Group. The Group links to the Jewish equivalent through the Rothschilds in Britain. Lord Rothschild was a young member of Rhodes' Inner Circle. The order in the US links to the Guggenheim, Schiff, and Warburg families. There were no Jews at all in the order until very recently. In fact, the order has, as Rosenbaum suggests, some definite anti-Semitic tendencies. Token Jews and token blacks have been admitted in recent years. There is an Illuminati connection. Some details are in the Square article. More details will be in our future volumes. All these groups have cooperative and competitive features, but to argue that all the world's ills can be ascribed to any one of these groups is false. The core of the order, like the core of the group in England, comprise about 20 families. In the US case, they are mostly descendants from the original settles in Massachusetts. Newell did not enter the order until mid-19th century and until recently, has never dominated the order. On the other hand, key families, the Whitneys and the Harrimans, are linked to their own banking interests. In many ways, these old-line Jenkins families have outsmarted the bankers. The Puritans diverted bankers well to their own objectives without always absorbing the banker families. The order controls the substantial wealth of Andrew Carnegie, but no Carnegie has ever been a member of the order. The order used the Ford wealth so flagrantly against the wishes of the Ford family that two Fords resigned from the board of the Ford Foundation. No Ford has been a member of the order. The name Morgan has never appeared on the membership list, although some Morgan member partners are with the inner core, for example Davidson and Perkins. Interestingly, the Astor name is prominent in the group in England, but not in the order in the US.